Sitting in Houston, Texas, discussion of divesting from fossil fuel companies is not well received. However, if it is the right thing to do, it is the right thing to do. And as we've heard, we are called to a prophetic witness. So my question is it the right thing to do? And let's return to where we were in the first 45 minutes. We articulated a problem, and we discussed at some length both the importance and the urgency of that problem. And we are now wrestling with what, therefore, do we do about it? My biggest single concern with divestment is not the adverse reaction my friends in Houston would have to it. My biggest single concern is I do not see a causal connection between the problem we have articulated and divestment as a solution. Our carbon footprint, given divestment, will be the same as our carbon footprint without divestment. To the extent our carbon footprint changes, it is not divestment that changes it. And if we don't change our carbon footprint, we are right back to the strongly adverse scenarios that we were talking about not quite 2 hours ago. And that is the basic disconnect that drove the group of us who were working on crafting alternatives. And yes, Dan noted that we as Presbyterians do not possess the secular authority to implement tax policy. But I don't think that lets us off the hook for articulating and advocating for, including at the voting booth, articulating and advocating for those policies that must be implemented by the secular authorities in order to do what needs to be done in order for us to be faithful to our calling. And there are overtures out there awaiting concurrences that do articulate alternatives to divestment. And the one from my particular church, and I will confess a certain pride in it because I wrote it, does say that our excessive consumption of fossil fuels has been self-centered and sinful. And a marketing tip, calling all of us sinners is a poor way to muster support for it over. But I begin by confessing that our excessive consumption has been self-centered and sinful. And the second paragraph has the obvious next step, which is calling for repentance. Now, what are the practical steps that would be sufficient or necessary or maybe just helpful to cause us to change our behaviors? If you want to divest. I, however, don't think divestment of itself does a thing to change our behaviors. The loan programs that would fund replacing 300-watt light bulbs, which are making us progressively more warm up here, yes, that changes behavior. But we talk about what are steps that we can take, some of them on our own because they are within our control and authority. Many of the most important ones, however, as Dan pointed out, aren't within our authority because they require action by the secular authorities. And that requires advocacy for pricing carbon emissions. But having articulated a problem that I think we've all agreed on, having articulated the urgency and importance of that problem, what then should the church do? If you think divestment is a sufficient solution, then by all means support divestment. If you think divestment is the right thing to do because it's not a sufficient decision, support divestment. But if you think something else is necessary to activate the changes in behavior that are necessary to solve the problem, then there are alternative overtures out there for which I would seek your support.